When my husband announced he was leaving for a 2-year business assignment in London, I, his wife, saw him off in tears. But the moment I turned away, I rushed to the bank and withdrew our entire $1.5 million. The next day, after discovering the horrifying secret behind his trip, I filed for divorce. Amid the chaotic hum of thousands of people rushing through the international departures hall, boarding announcements echoed at a steady rhythm. Standing at the security checkpoint, I clutched Ethan's large hand, trying to rein in my emotions and hold back the tears welling in my eyes. Ethan looked at me, his gaze filled with affection and regret. It was the same look I had trusted completely for the past 5 years. Ethan gently brushed away the strands of hair on my forehead. His voice was deep, but laced with emotion. "Stay home, take good care of your health, and don't overwork yourself," he said. "It will all be over in a flash, and I'll be back as soon as the project is finished." I nodded, tears starting to stream down my cheeks, soaking my mask. Sniffling, I managed to speak. "Take care of yourself too," I told him. "Eat well, and don't get too lost in your work. I will wait for you, no matter how long it takes." Ethan pulled me into a fierce embrace, so tight it took my breath away. He gently patted my back and whispered promises of a bright future. Thinking of the money we would save to move into a bigger house, and the children we would have when he returned, I buried my face in his solid chest and squeezed my eyes shut. It was not out of emotion or sadness, but to hide the contemptuous smile that was about to form on my lips. The moment I pressed my face against that broad chest, my keen sense of smell detected a foreign scent lurking beneath the clean fabric of his shirt. It was not the fabric softener I always used, nor was it the oceanic cologne I had given him for his birthday last month. It was the sweet aroma of sandalwood, mixed with the heady scent of Jacquin's sage, a captivating and possessive feminine fragrance. The scent hit my brain like a physical blow. It reminded me of the cruel truth hidden behind this business trip, of the future he had planned. He had held her. Perhaps only a few hours ago. Just before coming to the airport after playing the part of a model husband at home, I hugged him one last time, fighting back the nausea rising in my stomach. I held him tightly, as if saying farewell to our marriage, which had been clinically dead for the past 3 days. Ethan let me go, looked at me one last time, and then pulled his suitcase toward the security line. His retreating figure was full of confidence and determination. He turned back to wave, and the rasta, warm smile I had always known was still on his face. I stood there waving, perfectly playing the part of a devoted wife pining for her husband on a long business trip. Looking up at the words Chicago, London flashing on the departure board, I thought to myself, "Go far, Ethan, and enjoy your dream to the fullest. Because when you come back, the world you knew will be nothing but a lonely island of one." I adjusted the collar of my coat, and hurried out of the airport, leaving behind the clamor of farewells and the man who was once my everything. I returned to our luxury condo. Darkness was beginning to fall, and the house felt empty and cold. The warmth of the dinner I always had ready was gone. I stared at Ethan's shoes, neatly arranged on the shoe rack, and felt a pang of hollow, ridiculous sorrow. This place had once been my sanctuary, a space where I had cultivated every small moment of happiness. But now, everywhere I looked, I saw only deceit. I went straight to the study without changing my clothes or turning on the living room lights. The glow from the computer monitor cast a pale, static light on my face. I logged into our online banking system, and though my fingers typed on the keyboard with practiced ease, a line of tension ran down my spine. A list of accounts and certificates of deposit appeared on the screen. The total amount displayed before me was $1,525,000. This was everything we owned. No, to be precise, it was everything I owned. Over $1 million of it was money my parents had given me as seed capital after selling their farm. The rest was composed of my salary, bonuses, and investment profits accumulated over the last 5 years. Ethan had always said he was no good with money. He wanted to entrust me with our finances so he could focus on his business. Either he trusted me, or he trusted my foolishness and blind love. He believed I would be the faithful watchdog of his finances forever. So, although all the online deposits were in my name or joint accounts, the phone number for receiving the calls one-time passwords was mine. I took a deep breath and began the process of canceling the deposits, one by one. The 1-2-month and 2-4-month CDs had not yet reached maturity. If I withdrew them now, I would lose all the accumulated interest. But I did not care. I could live without the interest, but I could not leave a single penny of JAS. The principle for a trader. My hand trembled slightly as I clicked to confirm the first withdrawal. It was not from fear, but from the rage simmering in my gassed veins. This money was my parents' sweat and tears, my youth and sacrifice. What was he planning to do with it? Buy a house for his young mistress in London? Build a new life on the scorched earth of my own? I liquidated each deposit and consolidated everything into the Freedom Fund account. The number $1,500,000 sat neatly in the account. While waiting for the final settlement, I opened another tab and logged into a personal account at a different bank that I had secretly opened. It was an account Ethan knew nothing about. I entered the transfer command. As a VIP client, my transfer limit was high. To avoid any system errors, I transferred the money in 3 separate installments. Each time I entered the OTP code, I7 received on my phone, I felt like I was breaking an invisible chain. The balance change notifications popped up in silence. Your transfer has been completed, and the current balance is 0. I stared at the round 0 displayed on the screen, and my heart felt light, as if a great weight had been lifted. The entire $1.5 million was safely transferred. Ethan was on the plane. He was flying toward his dream, completely unaware that his solid foundation had been completely severed. I leaned back in my chair, let out a long sigh, picked up the phone, and called Maya. Maya answered quickly, her voice full of concern. "Chloe, are you okay?" "He's gone," I spoke in a strangely calm voice, staring at the blank computer screen. "I just finished transferring the money, too." "Maya, please file the Bravanese section divorce papers for me tomorrow. The ones I already signed." I let the memories of 3 days ago wash over me, sharp as broken glass. That day, the weather in Chicago was warm with a dry autumn sun that made you feel thirsty and restless. I finished my afternoon shift early and left the office. Stopping by a famous bakery to buy Ethan's favorite cheesecake, my heart was as joyful as a child's. I was going to pick him up from work for a surprise. Just as my car turned onto the street where Ethan's office building was located, I saw my husband's familiar car leaving the underground parking garage. I was about to honk to call him, but an instinct told me to stop. He had told me he had a client meeting and would be home late. Ethan's car did not head in the direction he usually took for client meetings, but toward Lincoln Park, an upscale area with many international firms. I followed from a distance, keeping enough space to avoid being seen, but not so much that I would lose him. Ethan stopped in front of a large building, but he did not get out right away. It seemed he was waiting for someone. The passenger door opened, and a young woman stepped out. She was slender in a form-fitting business dress. Her long, wavy hair was a chic chestnut color. It was Isabella, the new markets director, he often mentioned, praising her work ethic. However, the way Isabella emerged from the car, the way she turned back to smile at the man inside was not the attitude of a subordinate toward her boss. I parked in a hidden corner, my heart pounding, and stared at the gleaming sign of the UK Immigration Consulting Office they had just entered. That sign was a splash of cold water, numbing all my senses. It was not a romantic cafe, or a clandestine hotel, but an immigration consulting firm. This detail was more telling than 1,000 lies. It exposed a truth far more cruel than mere physical betrayal. Ethan was not just cheating on me. He was planning to abandon his entire current life and run away. I pulled my hat down, covered my face with a mask, and quietly got into the next elevator, following them inside. When the elevator doors opened on the 12th floor, I saw them at the information desk. I hid behind a large potted plant in the waiting area. It was close enough to overhear their conversation, but far enough not to be seen. Isabella was affectionately adjusting Ethan's tie. Her hands moved over his shirt with a practiced, possessive touch. "Darling, what about that woman, Chloe? If you just leave like this, won't she get suspicious and make a scene?" she whispered. It was a sweet voice, but to my ears, it was as grating as nails on a chalkboard. Ethan scoffed, a smile I had never seen at home. He took Isabella's hand and kissed her forehead tenderly. It was an affectionate gesture he had not shown me in a long time. "Don't worry, honey," he replied, his voice cold and calculating. I told her. "It's a project assignment. That fool trusts me completely, and is even cheering me on to make money for a bigger house. Once I get there, get settled, and buy a house in my name, I'll hit her with the divorce papers. Since I manage all the Bersamars' money, what can she do?" I felt a hand squeezing my heart. The pain was so intense I had to cover my teen mouth to keep from crying out. To think that the business trip I had been so excited about was actually his plan to elope with his mistress. And in the future he had drawn, there was no place for me. I did not run out and make a seventh scene, nor did I scream at the adulterous couple in front of everyone, or tear them apart. I stood frozen, feeling every cell in my body die, only to be reborn as something colder and more ruthless. I quietly turned and left, swallowing my tears and turning my pain into a hatred that settled deep in my bones. It was at that moment I knew what I had to do. Before this ship called marriage sank to the bottom of the ocean for good, I had to reclaim everything that was mine. I returned to the present. After completing the transfer of the $1.5 million, I decided to take the next step in my plan. I drove to the suburb where my in-laws lived. I had lied to Ethan, telling him I would go light a candle at their church to pray for his parents and wish them well for his journey. The car sped down the highway, but my heart felt heavy, as if I were carrying a great burden. This was because I knew what I was about to face would be even more ruthless than the truth I had encountered at the consulting firm. A handsome 3-story house in the suburbs, built largely with the money we had sent them, came into view, exuding a false sense of peace. Seeing me with a large fruit basket and a thick envelope, my mother-in-law greeted me with a radiant smile. She led me into the house, endlessly praising how talented and dedicated her son was. "Our Ethan truly has great ambitions, dear," she said. "I hear this time he's going to export his knowledge and bring glory to the family. You must stay home and be wise. Don't let your heart be swayed by useless jealousy. A woman must be a steadfast support and know how to sacrifice for her husband to be respected and loved." I looked at my mother-in-law. My heart was as cold as an iceberg. Did she not know her son was running away with his mistress? Or was she hiding it from me? Even though she knew? I placed the envelope, containing $2,000 on the table. I considered it the last payment I had to make for the title of a good daughter-in-law. "Yes, Mom. I understand," I said softly. "As long as he works hard, all I wish is for Ethan to return safely and in good health." Taking advantage of a moment when my mother-in-law was busy preparing lunch in the kitchen, I slipped into my in-law's bedroom. It was where the family's most important documents were kept. In his haste, Ethan had forgotten to take his original birth certificate, which was essential for me to complete the divorce proceedings on my own. While he was away, I quickly retrieved the document from a drawer, hastily stuffed it into my purse, and returned to the living room as if nothing had happened. Just then, my mother-in-law's phone rang loudly. She rushed out of the kitchen to answer it. She did not notice me sitting behind the large window curtain. Her voice, full of pride and triumph, carried to her sister on the other end. "Oh, don't you worry. Ethan has it all figured out," she said. "He said once he gets settled over there and buys a big house, he'll bring us over to live in comfort. As for that old wife at home, just leave her be. She can't even have a child, and is a fool. Ethan said he's been sick of her for a long time. Just let her watch the house, and when it's all over, give her a little money and divorce her, that's it." Every word my mother-in-law spoke was like a hammer blow to my eardrums, shattering the last bit of affection I had left. It turned out I was the only one in this family being deceived. They treated me like a maid, a security guard, and a walking ATM. Meanwhile, they were planning a happy future in London together, without me. I sat still as a stone, clenching my fists so hard my nails dug into my flesh, but I felt no pain. The physical pain was nothing compared to the bleeding wound seeping into my soul. I took a deep breath, regained my composure, and stepped out from my composure hiding place, pretending I had just come from the restroom. That lunch, I swallowed each spoonful of rice as if I were eating sand. Looking at the fake, smiling faces of my in-laws, I swore to myself that this would be the last time I set foot here as their daughter-in-law. As I said my goodbyes and left, I glanced back one last time. There was no lingering affection in my eyes, only the resolve of a woman pushed to the edge. Leaving my in-laws' house, I drove straight to Maya's law office. Maya's office was on the 20th floor of a downtown skyscraper. She was not just my legal counsel, but also my best friend from college. She had witnessed my entire journey of falling in love with and marrying Ethan, and she was the first to warn me about the calculating glint in his eyes. Her office was simply decorated, but it exuded a professional and cool atmosphere, much like her personality. Maya greeted me with a tight hug. Without any empty words of comfort, she silently placed a glass of warm water in front of me. She knew that what I needed now was a solution, not pity. She knew I needed a sharp sword to sever this toxic relationship. Maya spread a thick stack of documents on the table, her voice firm and clear. The divorce papers are ready. Chloe, this process might be a bit more complicated because Ethan is abroad. Not here, but that gives us a huge advantage. She pushed a stack of photos toward me. It was irrefutable evidence of the affair, collected by Mr. Henderson, the private investigator I had hired over the past 3 days. Photos of Ethan and Isabella kissing and hugging at the airport. Photos of them checking in for the same flight. And most importantly, copies of transaction records showing the plane tickets were purchased from a secret account of Ethan's, which I had managed to access. Maya continued her analysis. Her eyes were as sharp as a legal warrior's. Our strategy is to act first and report later. Your withdrawal of the $1.5 million was completely legal. That's because the accounts were in your name, or you had discretionary rights as a co-owner. And most importantly, the source of that money was your parents. We'll argue that you moved the money to preserve your receivable assets, and that it's intended to offset the assets. He's already secretly moved to London to buy a house for his mistress. I nodded, feeling somewhat relieved by Maya's thorough preparation. She was right. I had not stolen anything. I had simply reclaimed what was rightfully mine, what my efforts and feelings deserved. Maya glanced at her watch, smiled knowingly, and turned to face me. It's 8 p.m. here now. It must be around 2 a.m. in London. Those two lovebirds have probably just arrived at the airport and are eagerly checking into their hotel. This is the golden time to give them a grand opening gift. Maya turned her computer screen toward me, and an email addressed to both Ethan's work and personal email addresses was already drafted. The email was brief, but crucial. Attached were a scanned copy of the divorce papers signed by me, all the photos proving the affair, and a notification regarding the event. Now empty accounts. My finger hovered over the enter key for a moment. Not because I still had lingering feelings, but because I knew that with this one click, my life would change completely in a stormy, but also liberating direction. I took a deep breath and remembered the contemptuous smile I saw on Ethan's face at the consulting firm and the venomous words of my mother-in-law. Click. The dry sound of the keyboard echoed in the silence. The email was sent. Maya patted my shoulder with an encouraging look. It's done. Now, go home, take a hot bath, and wait with a glass of wine. A call will be coming soon from across the Atlantic. That night, a sudden rain began to fall over Chicago. The sound of rain on the tapper at Eve sounded like my heart breaking. I sat alone in the spacious living room, holding a glass of red wine. I did not drink, I just felt the cold of the glass seep into my palm. The phone on the table was as silent as a sleeping beast, but I knew it would soon awaken and roar. At exactly 11 p.m., the screen lit up, and a jarring ringtone shattered the silence. The name my loving husband appeared on the screen, a bitter irony. Ethan was calling. The call came later than I expected. Perhaps he had tried to pay the hotel bill, but his credit card was declined, or he had opened his banking app to check the balance. I let it ring for a long time, took a deep breath to compose myself, and slowly swiped the screen to answer. I put the call on speaker, left the phone on the table, and prepared to face the storm of fury that would come from across the Atlantic. What did you do? The sound of Ethan's scream tore through the silence of the room like thunder. His voice was no longer the deep, affectionate tone from the airport. Instead, it was filled with fear, horror, and sheer rage. I could hear his heavy breathing, and the sound of things being knocked over in the background. It showed how much he had lost his mind. Are you insane? Why is the account empty? Why are my cards not working? Where is the money? Where did you hide it? Do you have any idea how embarrassed I am? Sitting in this hotel lobby? I took a sip of wine, letting the bitter taste spread on my tongue, and replied calmly. My voice was as cold and sharp as a razor blade. Hello, Ethan. How was the flight? Is Isabella doing well? She must be tired. After taking care of you for over 7 hours. On the other end of the line, there was a moment of silence, filled only with heavy, ragged breathing. It was a dead silence, as if Ethan's throat had been squeezed shut. He stammered, his voice shifting from anger to terror. You? What are you talking about? Since when did you know? I've known since you walked into that immigration consulting firm holding that woman's hand. I've known since you kissed her forehead and promised to buy her a house in London with my money. Ethan, did you think I was a fool? Did you think I would stay here, guarding the house for 2 years just for you to come back and discard me? You miserable bastard. Give me my money back right now. That was my sweat and blood. If you don't return it, I'll call the police. I'll have you rot in jail. Ethan screamed, losing all reason in his desperation, revealing his greedy and cowardly nature. I scoffed, and a bitter laugh echoed in the rainy night. Go ahead and report me. Try it if you dare. That money is mine and from my parents. It's my right to do what I want with it. And you are the one who committed marriage fraud. I'll consider that money as compensation for the 5 years of my youth wasted on you, or as the tuition fee for my stupidity. Oh, I almost forgot. The house in London, you secretly bought with our joint funds a long time ago. I've already had my lawyer handle everything. I'll get back my half, not a penny less. Chloe, listen to me. Don't do this. We're husband and wife. Ethan's voice suddenly dropped, and he began to plead desperately in the face of my resolve. However, I did not let him finish. Oh, husband and wife? My husband died the moment you two set foot in that immigration consulting firm. The person I'm immigration consulting firm talking to now is nothing but a traitor and a greedy man. Goodbye. I hope you and your mistress have a happy, poor life abroad. I hung up decisively and blocked Ethan's number. The room returned to its original silence, with only the sound of rain outside. Staring at the blank phone screen, I did not feel the satisfaction I had imagined, but a deep sorrow that permeated my soul. I had won this game, but I had lost the man I once loved most. After the turbulent phone call with Ethan, I thought I would find some peace to mend the broken pieces of my soul. But life seemed to want to test me once more. The next morning, as I sat by the window, watching the raindrops cling to the young leaves, my phone chimed with a new message. This time, it was not from the bank, nor from my treacherous ex-husband. It was an unknown number, but the profile picture was of a young woman smiling triumphantly. I opened the message, and what greeted me was a close-up photo taken from an airplane window, showing a slender, well-manicured hand holding a Temple Towers man's larger hand against the backdrop of a blue sky. A sparkling diamond ring adorned the woman's ring finger. I recognized the ring immediately. Because Ethan had lied to me, showing me the design and saying he was choosing a gift for an important female client. It turned out that client was his young mistress, who was sitting next to him on the flight to their dream paradise. The accompanying message was short, but dripping with venom. Chloe, thank you for letting Ethan go. You were too old for his big dreams. Take good care of yourself back home. We will live happily ever after. Isabella. Isabella, my husband's mistress, had officially revealed herself and was provoking me. Instead of shame, she looked triumphant, like a victor who had just claimed a precious prize. Reading that message, a strange sense of amusement welled up inside me, instead of the anger or jealousy I had expected. She thought she had won and snatched the perfect man, but she had no idea that what she was holding was just an empty shell with an empty wallet. I did not block her number, or send back a vitriolic reply to vent my anger. Instead, I calmly took a screenshot of the entire message and the photo. Shortly after, I received an email from Mr. Henderson, the private investigator I had hired. It contained detailed information about Isabella that he had just uncovered. She was drowning in debt in the US due to her extravagant lifestyle, and clinging to Ethan to go to London was not just about love, but also her only way to escape the creditors who were relentlessly pursuing her. I scoffed and typed a new status on my personal Facebook page. I did not complain or explain my situation. I simply posted a photo of the Chicago sky after the rain with a short caption. The sky is bluest after the rain. Why? Storm. Welcoming the single life. Best of luck to those who left me and are picking up what I threw away. I had unblocked a few close friends, and they were influential figures in our spiritual social circle. Within 10 minutes, the post had hundreds of reactions, questions, and expressions of surprise began to spread. I knew that the rumors would travel faster than the wind, and my meaningful silence would be the most severe psychological punishment for those on the other side of the Atlantic who were celebrating. Isabella wanted an explanation. I gave her one. However, the explanation was that the one who took the spoils was a third party, a label she could never erase for the rest of her life. I turned off my phone, tossed it aside on the sofa, leaned back, closed my eyes, and felt a rare sense of peace seep into every cell of my body. A fight with a mistress does not require claws or harsh arguments. Just peace and a touch of well-timed cruelty are enough. The news that I had unilaterally filed for divorce and withdrawn all our savings spread quickly. Just 2 days after Ethan left for London, my in-laws stormed into my house, acting as if they were about to devour their rebellious daughter-in-law. The sound of the doorbell chimed insistently, accompanied by the rude, thoughtless knocking of people who felt entitled to judge others' morality. I opened the door to face my in-laws and a few of Ethan's aunts and uncles. My mother-in-law, who had spent her life going to church and praying, was now red-faced with anger. She pointed her finger at my face and screamed shrilly, "You vicious wench! Are you trying to kill my son? He worked so hard to go abroad, and instead of helping him, you're trying to block his path. Give the money back right now. If you don't, I'll call the police and have you arrested." My father-in-law stood beside her, not shouting, but his eyes were full of contempt and disappointment. "We are very disappointed in you, Chloe. What has this family done to you to make you so disrespectful? When a couple has a disagreement, you should close the door and talk things out. Why did you have to let this happen, making it the talk of the town?" My in-laws all joined in, defending their own. Harsh words rained down on me like stones. They called me greedy, immoral, a woman who did not know how to protect her husband. I stood there, leaning against the shoe rack, clenching my fists to keep from trembling with injustice. There was a time when I had considered them my own flesh and blood, and had diligently cared for them whenever they were sick. However, when the biggest crisis hit, they revealed their true nature, selfish and blindly protective of their child. I waited for their anger to subside a crupsidas little, then slowly walked into the living room and took out a thick stack of documents that I had prepared in advance from a drawer. I did not scream, nor did I cry out in protest of my innocence. I simply placed the photos and documents on the glass table and gently pushed them toward my in-laws. "Mom, Dad, aunts, and uncles, please take a look and tell me. This is the kind, capable, and filial son you are all defending." My mother-in-law picked up the stack of photos, which showed her son kissing and embracing another woman. Her hands began to tremble as she saw them, looking at luxury apartment listings and a property deed in London, bearing both their names. The money transfers from our joint account to Isabella's were clearly documented, irrefutable. The atmosphere in the living room suddenly fell silent, so quiet that even the ticking of the clock could be heard. The faces that had just been arrogant and full of anger were now gone, replaced by confusion and shame. My mother-in-law dropped the stack of photos, slumped onto the sofa, and stammered as if she could not speak. The naked truth before them made the moral lectures they had just given me a ridiculous joke. I looked my father-in-law straight in the eye and said clearly, word by word, "I withdrew the money to protect myself. The assets I worked so hard to build oversassed it. The past 5 years. He was using my money to support a woman and was planning the King's to buy a house for his mistress. Did you not know about this? Or did you know? But covered for him, treating me like a fool the whole family was leaning on? No one could answer my question. They avoided my sharp gaze, silently got up, like defeated people, and left. I slammed the door shut, leaned against the cold wood, and slowly slid down to the floor. Now I was alone in the vast room, with only a gaping emptiness left. I did not cry, but my heart ached as if someone were squeezing it. The meaning of family that I had so painstakingly built was, in the end, just a glamorous shell covering the decay within. Today, I had shattered that shell with my own hands. It was painful, but it was necessary to set myself free. After the intense confrontation with my in-laws, I decided to resign from my job. The office atmosphere, with its hushed whispers behind my back, had become exhausting. I needed a break and a space to heal my emotional wounds. With the capital I had secured, I decided to pursue a dream I had cherished since college, but had put aside due to the busyness of supporting a family. My goal was to open a tea house and a ceramic studio. I rented a small 2-story house tucked away in a quiet alley near Wicker Park. The old house had moss-covered bricks and a faded tile roof, with beautiful wisteria blooming under the afternoon sun by the gate. I threw myself into renovating the space, choosing every tile and piece of furniture myself. The smell of fresh plaster and paint mixed with the musty scent of the old house, creating a unique aroma of rebirth. During those days, I immersed myself in work from dawn till dusk. The process of shaping lifeless lumps of clay into forms imbued with soul brought a sense of peace to my mind. When my hands were covered in clay and my back was drenched in sweat, I felt truly alive. I was no longer a devoted wife, nor was I a dutiful daughter-in-law. I chopped off the long hair I had kept for 5 years, the style Ethan had always said he liked. Looking at my reflection in the mirror with a chic short haircut, I smiled. It was a smile mixed with the relief of someone who had finally shed a heavy burden. During the construction, I met Liam, an architect and contractor, in his mid-30s, introduced by a friend. At our first meeting, Liam did not make a teeple time strong impression with a flashy appearance or sweet words. He wore a faded t-shirt with paint splatters on his pants, and a mysterious sadness lurked in his deep-set eyes. Liam was a man of few words. He quietly listened to my somewhat dreamy ideas about the shop space, occasionally nodding as he offered practical advice on structure and lighting. He worked meticulously and carefully, as if he were tending to his own home. Once, I saw him personally climb the scaffolding to fix some wiring. His forehead was beaded with sweat, but his eyes were intensely focused. One late afternoon, as I was arranging the ceramic shelves, Liam came in. He was holding a warm cup of lotus tea. Placing the cup on the table, he said quietly, "Have some tea. It will warm you up. The wind is starting to pick up." That simple gesture made me pause. How long had it been since someone had told me to stay warm? How long had I been so used to taking care of others that I had forgotten I needed protection too? I quietly expressed my gratitude, lifted the teacup cup, and took a sip. The bitter taste on my tongue gradually turned into a sweet aftertaste, and the scent of lotus flowers spread in my mouth, warming my lonely heart. "What are you going to name this place?" Liam suddenly asked, his eyes fixed on the wisteria flowers swaying in the wind. "Serenity," I replied, my gaze distant. Hoping that the word serenity would be enough for its life, Liam nodded. His gaze toward me seemed to contain sympathy and understanding. It was as if he could see through the storm in my heart, hidden behind a calm exterior. Between us, there were no hesitant or hurried words. Only an invisible connection began to sprout amidst the piles of respect. The Serenity Tea House and studio gradually took shape, and Liam's presence in my life became more and more familiar. He was not just a contractor, but a shadow-like friend who quietly appeared whenever I was in trouble to help with things that I, a single woman, could not do. One day during lunch, when I went to UPS, the construction site, to deliver lunch, I saw Liam sitting alone in a corner of the yard, intently looking at his phone. His eyes were fixed on the screen with an unusually tender expression. Curious, I approached and discovered he was video calling his young daughter, who was about 5 or 6 years old. The child, with big, round, dark eyes, was chattering to her father about school. As soon as he saw me, Liam quickly said goodbye to his daughter and ended the call. The smile vanished from his lips, replaced by the shadow of chronic depression. Through a few short conversations, Later, I gradually understood his situation. Liam's wife had passed away from cancer 3 years ago, leaving him a single father, raising his child alone. He was both a father and a mother, and he endured the hard work of construction to provide a comfortable life for his daughter. Liam's story touched the most vulnerable part of my heart. I was moved as I looked at this man, who appeared strong and burly on the outside. He had also experienced loss and endured the pain of permanent separation. However, he did not break down or wallow in self-pity. He chose to live strongly, driven by dasezel, responsibility and love. Whenever my best friend, Maya, visited the shop, she would wink at me and try to set me up with Liam. "Hey, look at Liam," she would say. "He's kind and hardworking, and what's more, he's in the same boat as you and is lonely. You two would be a perfect match. Good men are practically extinct now, so if you don't act fast, you'll lose him." I just laughed off Maya's teasing. At this moment, the word man was still a nightmare in my heart. It was a wound that had not yet healed. Ethan's betrayal had left a huge hole in my heart. I was afraid to start over, and I was also afraid to open myself up again only to be hurt. "All I need right now is money and freedom, Maya," I said with a determined look, half joking, half serious. "Men are the most wasteful and dangerous creatures in the world. I prefer the peace of being alone to being with a man every night in constant anxiety that he's cheating behind my back." Although I spoke strongly on the outside, every time I saw Liam fixing a broken light bulb for me or meticulously cleaning a paint stain off the floor, the defensive wall around my heart would shake a little. I knew I was scared. But I also knew that deep down, I still longed for true protection and a strong shoulder to lean on when I was weak. It was just that the old wounds were too deep, and they needed more time to heal completely. 3 weeks after Ethan left, the legal battle officially began. It was no longer about arguing over the phone, but about confronting each other in court. With paper and ink. I received a call from Maya on a bleak winter morning. Her voice was more serious than usual and foreshadowed the difficulties ahead. Maya suggested we meet at a cafe near the courthouse to discuss strategy. As soon as I saw her tense expression, I knew my opponent was not going to be easy. Maya placed a thick stack of documents on the table, sighed, and said, "The court has accepted the case, Chloe." But as I expected, Ethan's side has hired a large, well-known law firm to represent him. "What's worse is that they're countersuing you for illegal possession of assets." I was startled, feeling as if I had been slapped. I had anticipated accusations or threats from Ethan, but I never imagined he would be so brazen as to turn the 5 tables on me. Maya opened the stack of documents, pointed to the fine legal print, and explained. "His lawyer claims that the $1.5 million in the joint account was not marital property, but his company's funds that he had entrusted to you. To prove the source of this money was not mine, of course, they submitted a 1-year investment trust agreement with a forged signature and a backdated effective date." I picked up the complaint and read it, each word like a poisonous snake crawling before my eyes. Ethan was not just trying to get the money back, he wanted to frame me as a criminal and send me to prison to satisfy his rage. His cruelty and cunning were beyond my imagination. Suppressing my rising anger, I clenched my fists and asked Maya, "So, what do I do? I have proof that the money came from my parents, and I have my pay stubs for the last 5 years. Is that enough to refute their claims?" Maya nodded, her eyes filled with the determination of a legal warrior. It is enough. But this will be a tough fight, Chloe. We have to prove those documents are forgeries. We need to request signature and seal verification, and, most importantly, we need proof that Ethan embezzled assets to buy the house in London. If we can prove that, the court will see his deceitful nature and dismiss his absurd claims. The first mediation session was held a week later, and of course, Ethan was absent. His representative was a middle-aged lawyer who looked respectable on the outside, but whose words were sharp and aggressive. He repeatedly emphasized that I had withdrawn the money without permission and deliberately ignored the towel evidence of Ethan's infidelity and his separate house purchase. However, Maya was completely unfazed. She resolutely presented each piece of Tashin refuting evidence, from bank transaction records to text messages in which Ethan admitted to buying the house. The atmosphere in the mediation room was as tense as a drawn bowstring. Sitting there, I felt bitter and disgusted watching my ex-husband's representative, who was doing everything to trample on me. Ethan would stop at nothing. He wanted me to return the money to save his own struggling life on the other side of the Atlantic. I thought the difficulties would only come from the court, but a real storm hit. On the opening day of the Serenity Tea House and Studio. The weather was beautiful that day, and I was busy with my friends welcoming the custod. First guests, dressed in a simple cream-colored linen dress. The space was filled with the fragrance of lotus tea and soft ambient music. Everything seemed perfect for a new beginning. However, just as the opening ceremony was in full swing, a menacing-looking pickup truck suddenly stopped in front of the shop. With a screech of brakes. Startled by the jarring sound, everyone turned to look. A fierce-looking man covered in tattoos got out of the truck. With an arrogant and threatening demeanor, he stormed into the shop. The surprised guests moved aside, and the joyful atmosphere vanished in an instant, replaced by fear. The leader, a large man wearing a thick gold chain, shouted, "Who's Chloe?" "Ethan's wife, come out, I have something to say to you." Trying to suppress the fear rising in my heart, I said in the calmest voice I could muster, "I'm Chloe." "Who are you? Why are you coming to my shop and causing a disturbance?" The leader sneered, threw a crumpled piece of paper on the wooden table, and gestured with his chin. "I'm your husband's creditor. Before Ethan went to London, he borrowed $50,000 from me for his business. I heard you co-signed for him. Now that bastard refuses to contact me and has run away, I have to find you to get my money back. So who am I supposed to get the money from?" I picked up the paper and looked at it. It was a handwritten promissory note, with Ethan's signature and the red stamp of a shady finance company. The loan amount was $50,000, with an exorbitant interest rate. And the most frightening thing was that, although my name was written in the guarantor section, my signature was completely absent. "You're mistaken," I said with a firmer voice. "I know nothing about this debt, and I never co-signed for him. Look. The guarantor's signature section is completely blank. The person who borrowed the money is the one who has to pay it back. Go find Ethan. I've divorced him, and I have nothing to do with him anymore." At the mention of divorce, the man slammed his fist on the table, shattering a braster delicate porcelain tea set. "Don't give me that legal crap. Debt incurred during a marriage is joint debt. If the husband borrows, the wife pays. If you don't pay up today, don't even think about doing business here. Hey, smash everything." At his command, his men began to destroy the tables, chairs, and flower pots. Customers screamed and fled, the joy vanished in a flash, replaced by chaos. Seeing my hard work shattered on the very first day, tears welled up in my eyes. I was not afraid of losing money. I was afraid that the peace I had tried so hard to regain would be completely destroyed by the ghosts of Ethan's past. In the midst of the chaos, as I watched the thugs run amok in despair, a sturdy figure suddenly rushed in and blocked the leader's path. It was Liam. Unlike his usual work clothes, today he was wearing a crisp white shirt to congratulate me. But now, it was stained with sweat and dust. Liam stood as firm as a rock, looking straight at the leader. His voice was low, but full of authority. "Stop. You're breaking the law. Do you know what the crime of trespassing and destruction of property is?" The leader paused for a moment at Liam's demeanor, but quickly sneered and said provocatively, "Who are you?" "I'm collecting a debt, not playing hero. No law can stop me. Even loan sharks have their own rules, but this is a land where the law applies." Liam took out his phone and showed the screen displaying a call to the police chief. "I just called Chief Miller. The police will be here in 5 minutes. Do you want to settle this quietly or at the police station? It's your choice." Hearing the police chief's name, the man's expression changed slightly. He knew that Liam, being in the construction industry, had extensive connections with the local police. He cursed and signaled his subordinates to stop. "Fine. You're good. I'll let you go today. But listen carefully. This isn't over. As long as your husband owes me money, you won't be able to escape this debt forever." He pointed at me, threatened me, and left in a huff, leading his men away. Only a mess remained where they had stood. As the sound of the truck's engine faded, My legs gave out, and I collapsed amidst the shattered porcelain. Liam quickly supported me, his eyes full of concern and sympathy. He carefully helped me to an intact chair, got the first aid kit, and bandaged the bleeding scratch on my hand from a shard of porcelain. Later, with Maya's timely legal support and evidence from the security cameras at the police station, we were able to prove that the money was borrowed for personal purposes like hiding assets abroad, gambling, and money laundering and else. That I had no knowledge of it and had not signed any guarantee. The police filed a report, and Chief Miller promised to provide protection if the thugs caused trouble again. As I left the police station after sunset, I looked at Liam walking beside me and felt an indescribable emotion. He was not a man of many words. He just quietly stood by my side, handling everything deftly. Looking at his comforting silhouette from behind under the yellow streetlights, the sturdy defensive wall around my heart shook violently. I realized that even in the midst of life's storms, there are people who are willing to protect you without asking for anything in return. A week after the loan shark incident, my life gradually returned to normal. Although the anxiety lingered, I received an urgent letter from the private investigator. He sent a stack of photos of Ethan taken from a distance, along with the latest news on the situation of Ethan and Isabella in London. I sat in a familiar corner of the shop and opened the envelope. The photos showed that the dream life of the young lovers was not as beautiful as they had imagined. Due to the high cost of living in London and Isabella's extravagant habits, the money Ethan had brought with him was quickly running out. In the photos, she was no longer as glamorous and charming as when she first arrived. She was dressed more shabbily, and the annoyance and dissatisfaction were evident on her face. One photo captured them having a fierce argument in the middle of a supermarket. Isabella was pointing at Ethan, who had his head bowed, a clear sign of his helplessness. Mr. Henderson had added a note below the photos. Isabella has started blaming Ethan for not getting the money back from Chloe. She demanded a designer handbag, but Ethan couldn't afford it. They had a huge fight and almost came to blows. Looking at those photos, I did not feel any sense of satisfaction. Instead, a bitter smile played on my lips. Was this all their love was, the love they called true love, by trampling on someone else's happiness? When money could no longer sustain their love, what they called true love revealed its true nature of exploitation and calculation. As I continued to read the report, I was shocked by new information provided by Mr. Henderson. As Ethan lost his financial backing and was pressured by Isabella, he began to stray down a dangerous path. He got involved in an online fundraising organization run by a group of expats there, hoping to make a quick buck and turn his life around. "This is a death trap," Mr. Henderson wrote. "The leaders of this organization are professional scammers. They are luring Ethan to invest even his meager remaining funds into it. Given Ethan's current psychological state, it is highly 7/6 state likely that he will lose everything and be completely ruined." I folded the letter and looked out the window. The yellow leaves were falling in the afternoon wind. Ethan was digging his own grave. And I knew that the day of his downfall was not far off. I did not need to do anything more. I just had to sit here and wait for karma to deliver its justice. He had sown the wind, so now he had to reap the whirlwind. The storm he had created himself would wash away everything he was trying to hold on to. One late afternoon when the autumn rain was falling and the wind was blowing, I was arranging some newly arrived unbaked pottery when my phone buzzed with a BSN's notification from Facebook Messenger. I glanced at the screen and paused when I saw the name that appeared. It was Isabella. It was not the provocative and arrogant message she had sent when she first arrived in London. This time, the tone was completely different. It was a voice of extreme distress and pleading. I opened the message, and before me were sentences hastily written and full of typos. It showed the writer was in a state of extreme panic. "I'm sorry, Chloe. I was wrong. I was deceived by Ethan. He's not rich or capable like he boasted. He came here and is pinching every penny, telling me to wash dishes at a restaurant to make a living. Meanwhile, he's just glued to some virtual cryptocurrency exchanges all day." I skimmed through the message, and a bitter smile tugged at my lips. So, the picture-perfect couple was already starting to crumble? Before I could reply, the next message arrived. A photo of Isabella's bruised arm was attached. He hit me yesterday. He came home after losing money and took it out on me. I'm so scared. I want to go back to the US, but he has all my documents and money. Please, have pity on me and lend me some money for a plane ticket. I promise. When I get back to the US, I'll work myself to the bone to pay you back. I'll even testify in court that he deceived me and embezzled your assets, so you can win the lawsuit. Please save me. Reading this, I could not help but laugh. A bitter laugh echoed in the quiet space of the studio. Who did she think I was? A benevolent Mother Mary? Or a fool who would save the person who had destroyed my family? She was willing to sell out her lover to find a way out. Her cunning and pragmatic nature had not changed at all. I replied slowly, word by word. My heart was as calm as a lake. Isabella, are you kidding me? This is the price of your choices, so you have to pay it yourself. Karma is fair, since you stole someone else's husband, you deserve to be beaten by him. Garbage should stay in the trash can, don't expect me to recycle you or pick you up. Goodbye. And never bother me again. As soon as I sent the message, I systematically blocked Isabella's account. I put down my phone and watched the rain outside the window. I did not gloat over her defeat, nor did I feel any pity for her miserable situation. I just realized that Isabella was also a victim of greed and ignorance, nothing more than a pawn. She had squandered her youth and honor chasing illusions. And now, the harsh reality was teaching her a painful lesson. After months of long and tiring legal battles, failed mediation sessions, and heated arguments between lawyers, the day of the court's verdict finally arrived. On that day, Chicago suddenly woke up from a long winter, and the sun rose. The faint sunlight filtering through the old trees in the field in front of the courthouse seemed to herald a brighter new beginning. I gathered my courage and entered the courtroom. Beside me was Maya, my friend and lawyer who had stood by me throughout this arduous journey. On the opposite side, in the defendant's seat, only the lawyer sat, his expression, unlike at the beginning, devoid of any confidence or arrogance. Maya presented the decisive evidence we had collected from Ethan's affair and his concealment of assets to buy a house abroad, to his creation of a fake promissory note to seize our joint property with a firm and convincing voice. The middle-aged female judge, with a stern expression but understanding eyes, began to read the verdict. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Feeling my heart pound, I held my breath and listened to every word. Based on the evidence submitted and the relevant laws, the court grants the recess. Plaintiff Chloe's request for divorce. Regarding the existing joint property of Dovers, $1.5 million, the presiding judge paused for a moment to adjust her glasses, then continued in a clear voice, the defendant Ethan is at fault for violating the institution of monogamous marriage. And it is acknowledged that he embezzled joint property without the plaintiff's consent to purchase real estate abroad. Therefore, the court has decided on a 7-to-3 property division ratio. Chloe will receive 70%, and Ethan will receive 30%. I gently squeezed Maya's hand, and although my palm was sweaty, the judge's next words made me unable to hold back my tears. However, considering that Mr. Ethan has already unilaterally used a portion of the joint property, specifically, an amount equivalent to 30% of the total value, to purchase a house in London and register it under his sole or joint ownership with another person, the court rules that the entire $1.5 million currently frozen will belong to the plaintiff, Chloe. This is considered compensation for the assets Mr. Ethan has already embezzled. Furthermore, Mr. Ethan is ordered to pay the plaintiff, Chloe, $50,000 for emotional distress. The judge's gavel sounded, signaling the end of a 5-year marriage stained with lies and pain. I sat stunned in my chair, tears streaming down my cheeks. They were not tears of weakness, but tears of liberation. I had won not just in terms of assets, but in the struggle to reclaim my justice and dignity. As I walked out of the courthouse, I looked up at the vast sky. A cold winter wind brushed against my hair, but I felt a strange warmth. Holding the verdict in my hand, I took a deep breath and filled the pages. I was free. From today, I was no longer Ethan's wife, nor was I the daughter-in-law of that treacherous family. I was Chloe, the master of my own life. News about Ethan no longer reached me through tormenting phone calls, but through short messages from Detective Henderson and international news articles about the expat community across the Atlantic. The London dream that Ethan had painstakingly built with deceit and betrayal was now shattering into pieces, like a sandcastle before a fierce wave. The UK police had officially launched an NAT's investigation into the financial fraud and money laundering ring that Ethan was involved in. The money he had brought from the US could not be proven to be from a legitimate source, and moreover, because it was invested in an illegal virtual exchange, it became irrefutable evidence of his guilt. Ethan's bank accounts were completely frozen. The house in the suburbs of London, which he had bought with Isabella, was also seized for investigation. Misfortune struck all at once, and Ethan was helpless. However, the biggest shock to him was not the law, but the betrayal of the very person he had pursued at all costs. The moment Isabella, the young socialite, sensed danger, she hastily took the remaining few pieces of jewelry and cash from the safe and disappeared in a flash. Mr. Henderson sent me a photo of Ethan, sitting dejectedly at a bus stop. His clothes were disheveled, his beard was unkempt, and his lifeless eyes stared into space. The once imposing and confident director was nowhere to be seen. Now, he was just a homeless man, without money, a home, or relatives, and worse, he was facing a prison sentence and a deportation order. Looking at that photo, I shuddered. Karma spares no one. It comes sooner or later. Ethan was reaping what he had sown. He had deceived me and meticulously calculated that I would be kicked out with nothing, but now he himself had been kicked out onto the street by his lover in the most cruel, naked, and miserable way possible. I turned off my phone, without a shred of pity left. This punishment was harsh, but it was a worthy price for the greed and wickedness he had shown. I returned to the tea house and focused on flower arranging. As I carefully trimmed each lotus stem, I told myself, let the past rest, and let the past rest. Despicable man bear his own karma. Late in the evening, as I was clearing the counters to prepare for closing, the shop's phone rang. It was rare for a call to come to the shop's phone at this hour. It was usually a wrong number or a spam call. I heard Maya's voice and was about to answer quickly and hang up. However, a familiar voice from the other end of the line made my heart stop for a moment. Chloe, please save me. I was wrong. It was Ethan. His voice was hoarse and trembling, full of desperation. It was mixed with the sound of a distant wind and the blare of car horns. I stood frozen, clutching the phone and silently listening to the gasps of the man who was once my husband. Chloe, I was scammed. Isabella abandoned me. She ran off with all the money. Now I'm being chased by the police. I have no hope left. Please, I'm begging you. Can you send me some money to hire a lawyer and pay bail? I was so foolish. I still love you. I did it because I was infatuated with that woman. Please just save me this one time. I'll come back to the US. I'll start over with you. The desperate plea poured out like a waterfall, but to me, it sounded meaningless and ridiculous. Did he think I was the foolish Chloe of the past? Did he think he could change my mind with a few sweet words and empty promises? I took a deep breath, my voice calm and cold, like 1,000-year-old ice. You have the wrong number. My husband, Ethan, the man I loved and trusted, died at O'Hare Airport 2 years ago. The person I'm talking to now is just a wee stranger. Nothing more than a criminal on the run from the law. Chloe, don't be so cruel. We were husband and wife, after all, Ethan screamed in desperation. Cruel? I let out a bitter smile. The cruelty I have today is what you taught me. Ethan, you must bear the consequences of your actions. Don't ever call me again. I have neither the money nor the mercy to save the person who broke my heart. I hung up decisively, severing the last link to my past. The room returned to its original silence, but a storm was raging in my heart. I stood there, my hand still trembling. Suddenly, the faint scent of lotus flowers wafted from behind me. I turned around. Liam had been there for a while. He said nothing, his deep eyes looking at me with full understanding and acceptance. He had heard everything, but chose to remain silent instead of judging or prying. Liam gently placed a warm cup of lotus tea in front of me, the rising steam blurring the 7 tears in my eyes. He spoke softly. His voice was deep and warm. Drink some tea to warm up. It's gotten cold, be careful not to catch a chill. That simple word of concern melted the ice in my heart at my most vulnerable moment. I lifted the cup, the warmth spreading from my palm to my heart. I realized I no longer had to pretend to be strong. The moment I hung up, the past was truly over. And a peaceful, warm future, like this warm cup of tea, was waiting for me. 2 days after Ethan's desperate call, I received another call. This time, it was from my father-in-law. The number displayed on the screen brought back memories of the days when I was a dutiful daughter-in-law, days when I worried every time a call came from their home. But this time, it was not the patriarchal voice of the past. His voice was trembling, hesitant, and full of desperation. "Chloe, it's Dad. Your mother had a stroke and is in the emergency room of a local hospital. She keeps calling your name as if she's hallucinating. I know. Our family treated you badly. But could you come visit her one last time before she goes?" I held the phone, and my heart softened. Although my hatred for Ethan remained, I felt more pity than concern for the two old people in the suburbs, even though they had sheltered their son. They were also victims of the foolishness of blindly protecting their children, and now they had to bear the consequences in their old age. That night, I drove to the suburban hospital. The hospital corridors were deserted, filled with the smell of antiseptic and the cold atmosphere of the crossroads of life and death. I went to visit my mother-in-law and found my father-in-law huddled on a bench. He looked much thinner than the last time I had seen him. When he saw me, he stood up in a panic, his eyes red and tearful. He tried to say something, but stopped, just bowed his head and motioned for me to go inside. My mother-in-law lay on the white hospital bed, surrounded by a tangle of machines and wires. Her face was distorted from the stroke, and her eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. When I approached, a faint spark of recognition flickered in her eyes. She tried to move the hand with the IV needle in it and mumbled some incomprehensible sounds. I took her wrinkled, thin hand. The hand that had once pointed, scolded, and waved at me was now so weak and cold. Tears streamed from the corners of her wrinkled eyes, soaking the pillow. She moved her lips and whispered in a voice so trembling that I could barely hear it even when I leaned close. "Chloe, I was wrong. Please forgive me." A bitter emotion welled up in my heart. If this apology had come sooner, if she had raised her son better, today's tragedy might not have happened. But there is no if in life. I gently held her hand and whispered, "Mom, please rest in peace. Don't think about it anymore. The past is the past. I have no more resentment." I had forgiven them. Not because they deserved to be forgiven, but because I wanted to free my own soul. Living with hatred in your heart is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. I wanted my mind to be at peace so I could move on with my life. Before I left, I stopped by the cashier to pay all the hospital bills and left enough money for my in-laws to cover their medication costs for the time being. As my father-in-law was collecting the money, his hands trembled as he held the stack of bills, and he cried like a child. He could not look me in the eye, and expressed his gratitude in a small voice. As I looked at him, I felt a strange sense of peace. This was the last time I would fulfill my duty to this family. It was a complete and humane end to our severed relationship. Shortly after the trial, the financial fraud case began to be reported in international media and online outlets related to expats living in London, highlighting the scale and severity of the incident. This case received particular attention from the American public. Images of the suspects being arrested by UK police were widely broadcast, and although part of their faces was blurred, I easily recognized the familiar face of Ethan in an orange prison jumpsuit. The articles detailed the trial proceedings. Ethan was charged with money laundering and fraud through virtual transactions. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his role as an active accomplice and the large scale of the illegal transactions. After completing his sentence, he was expected to be deported from the UK for research purposes and banned from re-entry. As I read each line on my phone screen, I felt like I was reading about the life of a stranger, not the man I had lived with for 5 years. There was no more satisfaction or resentment. Only emptiness and pity for a life that had passed. Ethan once had everything. A good job, a harmonious family, and a devoted wife. However, driven by insatiable greed and delusions of dreams that overshadowed everything, he lost it all, and now, in a foreign land, he was paying the price for his youth behind prison bars. My phone started ringing incessantly. Her friends, distant relatives who had mocked me when I got divorced, and those who had laughed at me as an abandoned woman, now, they were constantly texting and calling. Some congratulated me for getting out early, while others praised me for having good judgment and getting out in time. Some even brazenly asked what the secret was to getting my assets back. "Chloe, it's so lucky you broke up early. Otherwise, you'd be known as the wife of a criminal now. Heaven really has eyes. The wicked will surely be punished. You must be so comfortable now. Happy with the single life, and on top of that, you have a lot of money." I scrolled through the messages and smiled bitterly. People's hearts are truly deceitful. When you fall, they are willing to step on you and bury you deeper in the mud, but when you stand up and shine, they pretend to be your best friend and cheer you on. I did not reply to anyone and quietly turned off my phone. I brewed some young flower tea and sat on the balcony, looking down at the city at night. The yellow streetlights illuminated the shadows of the trees, creating a contrast between light and shadow. I took a sip of tea and felt the sweetness that followed the bitterness. The stories of Ethan, the broken marriage, and all the noisy stories of this world, they all really ended here. The verdict of the law had been declared, and the verdict of conscience had been carried out. In late autumn in Chicago, long, sad rains often came unexpectedly. This afternoon, the Serenity Tea House and studio was quiet, the sound of rain falling on the moss-covered tile roof creating a quiet and melancholic melody. As I was clearing the ceramic shelves, Liam came in. In his hands was a bouquet of white lotus flowers, carefully wrapped in old newspaper. It was my favorite flower. Liam took off his wet raincoat, hung it up, approached me, and placed the bouquet on the table. The faint scent of lotus flowers mixed with the smell of rain, creating a strangely quiet and warm space. He looked at me, and unlike his usual silence, his deep eyes were firm and determined. "Chloe," Liam's deep, warm voice broke the silence. "I know you're stuck in the past. I know your emotional wounds haven't fully healed. But I don't want to hide my feelings anymore." I was stunned, the dishcloth in my hand trembling slightly. I knew this day would come, but I did not expect it to be on a rainy afternoon like this. I lowered my head to avoid his gaze. "Liam, you don't have to answer right now." Liam took another step closer, and as the distance between us narrowed, I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "I'm not a man of many words, nor am I rich enough to promise you a life of luxury like they do. I'm just a construction worker and a single father raising a daughter. But I can promise you one thing. If you let me into your life, I will never let you worry, doubt, or feel insecure again." I looked up at him. In the eyes of this burly man, I saw no calculation or desire. Only a heart-wrenching pure sincerity. He was like an old tree, rough and unpolished on the outside, but full of warm life on the inside, ready to shelter anyone who leaned on it. "I'm scared," I confessed in a small voice. "I'm afraid I'll trust the wrong person again. I'm afraid that one day even this sincerity will disappear, just like my previous one." Liam smiled, a gentle smile that made his entire tired face turn warm. He gently took my hand, a hand stained with clay. "I understand your fear. I was also scared when my wife passed away. I was afraid I would never be able to love anyone again, and my daughter would suffer. But after meeting you, I realized that I want to take care of you. I want to grow old with you. I can wait for you for the rest of my life. Chloe, whether it's a year, 5 years, or 10 years, I'll still be waiting here until you're ready to open your heart." That confession was not flowery, with no candles or roses, but it moved my heart more than any vow. Although it was still raining outside, I felt like warm sunlight was seeping into my heart, warming every cold corner. After that rainy afternoon, Liam and I entered a new chapter. Everything happened quietly, as naturally as breathing. I had not officially accepted our love, but I cautiously, for allowed us both the opportunity to get to know each other better and enter each other's lives. I began to observe Liam more closely. With the calm gaze of a Tahitian, Indiachi woman who had experienced heartbreak, not the eyes of someone blindly in love, Liam proved himself through actions rather than words. He shared his phone password, social media accounts, and even the password to his home safe without me asking. He told me, "I have nothing to hide from you. Transparency is the foundation of trust, and I want you to feel completely safe with me." I often went to his house for dinner and played with his daughter, Lily. Watching him patiently braid her hair and meticulously remove fish bones during meals, I saw the image of a responsible and loving father. A man who knows how to love his child sincerely is certainly not a bad person to his woman. However, the complete collapse of my internal defenses happened at an unexpected moment. One evening, I arrived at Liam's house earlier than planned and I'm going to take Lily to buy a book. The door was slightly ajar, so I was about to push it open when I heard Liam speaking softly from the living room. I paused and looked through the crack in the door. Liam was standing in front of the memorial altar for his late wife. As he lit an incense stick, the smoke enveloped the portrait of a young woman with a gentle smile. Liam was praying, with his hands clasped, his voice full of emotion. "Honey, I'm taking Lily to buy a book with Chloe today. Lily loves Chloe very much and talks about her all the time. I love her very much too. She has suffered so much. I want to make it up to her. Please pray with the spirits there and bless my daughter, me, and her. Just as I promised, I will take good care of her." I stood outside the door, stunned and crying uncontrollably. He not only loved me but also respected his past and his late wife. With such a deeply affectionate and loyal man, a man who keeps his promises even to the promises deceased. What reason did I have to doubt the sincerity he showed me while he was still alive? At that moment, I realized that I had found the right person for me. Liam might not be the most perfect man in the world, but he was the most perfect piece to fill the void in my soul. I held back my tears, pushed the door open, and walked in. My heart was filled with trust and peace. Our relationship developed over the years quietly but steadily like an underground stream. However, life is not always rosy. One afternoon, I noticed something strange about Liam. He came home later than usual, looking haggard, with dark circles under his eyes, as if he had not slept in a long time. He still tried to talk to me affectionately, as always, but a woman's sensitive intuition told me he was facing a big problem. I was not immediately curious, but quietly observed. Over the next few days, Liam frequently went outside to take phone calls with a tense expression, and I could overhear harsh words related to money, advance payments, and payments. Finally, unable to watch the person I loved wither away any longer, I asked Maya to meet me at a cafe to ask what was going on. Since Maya worked in the banking industry and was close to both of us, she surely knew what was happening. Maya sighed, stirring her black coffee lightly and lowering her voice. "Liam told me to keep it a secret from you, but the situation is serious, Chloe. He has a lot of pride, so he doesn't want you to worry. The payment for the resort project he won the bid for has been repeatedly delayed due to financial pressure from the client. The workers are demanding a raise, and the cost of materials is increasing. He's scrambling to find money from all directions to cover the shortfall and is even considering mortgaging his own house." Hearing Maya's words, my heart tightened. I knew for sure he was a very proud man. He was afraid that if he revealed this truth, people would think I was with him for money or would pity me. However, he had forgotten that we were not budding lovers. That night, I waited for Liam, having prepared a lavish dinner. As soon as he sat down, I placed a file on the table. It was an investment partnership agreement that I had urgently asked Maya to draft that afternoon. It contained transparent and fair terms regarding rights and obligations. "I know about the project," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "I'm not giving you money, nor am I lending it to you out of pity. This is an investment contract. I have idle capital, and because I trust your ability and reliability, I want to invest as a shareholder in this project. We will share the profits proportionally and share the risks together." Liam stared at the paperwork before looking at me. His eyes were red. He bit his lip, trying to refuse, but I placed my hand on his and said firmly, "Liam, loving someone means sharing the burden together. If you consider me family, please let me weather this storm with you. Don't make it difficult for both of storm with you. Us just because of a man's pride." My sincerity and wise action melted his pride. Liam signed the contract, and his trembling hand clasped mine. We were no longer just lovers, but partners, who trusted each other on the battlefield. Time passed, until Ethan was sentenced to prison in a foreign land. Liam and I had entered a stable phase. The Serenity Tea House and Studio was becoming more stable phase, and more popular, and had become a peaceful haven for many. I thought the name Ethan had disappeared into the past forever. Then, one late afternoon when the Sobel.com wind was blowing, a man appeared at the door of the tea house. His haggard and ragged appearance made me almost not recognize him. His gray hair was disheveled, his skin was tanned from the weather, and his ragged, loose-fitting clothes covered a thin frame. However, I could not forget his eyes, greedy yet submissive. It was Ethan. Due to policy, he was either released earlier than expected or deported, and was sent back to the US in poverty. He stood there, staring at my shop with an unmistakable look of greed and envy. "Chloe, are you well?" "I'm back," Ethan said in a hoarse voice. "I knew you'd be here." I stepped out from behind the counter and faced him. I stood up straight and held my head high. There was no more fear or pain. I looked at him like a lost stranger. Liam, who was watering the plants in the yard, sensed my movement, put down the watering can, and quickly stood by my side to block the way. His sturdy shoulders formed a strong protective barrier. "Why are you here?" I asked in a cold voice. "I'm hungry, Chloe. I just got back, but I have no home, and my parents in the sevens suburbs are old and can't take care of me. Can you lend me some money? Or at least let me work as a security guard at a shop. After all, we were once husband and wife." Ethan began to beg, looking like he was about to kneel at any moment. I stared at the miserable man in front of me, without a trace of pity in my well heart. Was this the person who had once mocked me as a country bumpkin and dreamed of changing his life in a foreign land? "Mr. Ethan," I said, slowly and clearly, word by word, "there is nothing left between us. If you're hungry, go out and do manual labor. Your hands are still fine, aren't they? My shop doesn't hire anyone with a criminal record for fraud. Get out of here immediately. Don't make me call the neighborhood police." Ethan was stunned. He looked at Liam, and seeing his sharp eyes and clenched fists, he realized he could not cause trouble. He bowed his head, muttered a few curses, and sadly turned and left. His staggering, lonely figure disappeared into the yellow streetlights. I sighed, feeling as if I had just brushed a speck of dust off my shoulder. That speck of dust used to sting my eyes, but now it was light as air. A few days after that brief and unpleasant encounter, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. The envelope was old and the handwriting was sloppy, but I was familiar. I knew who it was from without opening it. Perhaps Ethan wanted to say one last thing, before completely disappearing to the countryside to escape his shame, or before leaving for another place to make a living. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to open it and read. I wanted to know if he had any more words to justify himself after all he had done. "Chloe, when you read this letter, I will be far away. I no longer have the face to see you happy with someone else while I am still in this city. I am writing this letter not to ask for money or forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I just want to confess a truth. When I married you, I never truly loved you. Seeing that you were kind, hardworking, and had financial support from your parents, I thought you would be an easygoing, docile wife, whom I could rely on to fulfill my ambitions. From the very beginning, I calculated that I would use you as a stepping stone. But I was wrong. Completely wrong. I lost the most precious gem of my life and chased after a small stone on the roadside. In prison, I realized painfully how great the price of betrayal is. I regret it, but it's too late. Live happily. Forget me like a terrible nightmare." After reading the letter, I did not cry or get angry. On the contrary, I felt a strange sense of liberation. Finally, he was honest about his true nature, if only once. That cruel confession helped me to shake off even the last remaining attachments to the past. It turned out I was never loved. This breakup was inevitable, and for me, it was a lucky escape. I took a lighter and burned the resist. The resist Texas tap letter on the table. The flame flared up, devouring each word, and in that late hour, it turned to ash. Watching the sin being carried away by the wind, I whispered, "Goodbye, Ethan." Let's pretend we don't owe each other anything in this life. I returned home. There, Liam was teaching Lily her homework. The warm laughter of father and daughter echoed everywhere. This was my reality, and the happiness I had to cherish and protect. This summer, Liam suggested that Lily and I go on a trip to Maui. After going through all sorts of storms and difficulties, we all needed a vacation to recharge. The sea in Maui was a deep blue, and the bright, yellow sun shone on the white sand. Watching Lily play with the waves and giggle, I felt a peace that was almost foreign. As the sun set, the golden light painted the sea and sky purple. Liam suggested we take a walk along the beach, and we let the cool seawater lap at our feet. We walked quietly side by side, with only the sound of the waves and the gentle wind. Suddenly, Liam stopped. He turned to look at me, his eyes sparkling, reflecting the warm sunlight. "Chloe, the sea is beautiful today, isn't it?" "Yes. It's really beautiful, Liam," I smiled and breathed in the salty smell of the sea. Liam took a deep breath as if to gather his courage and knelt on one knee in the freshet sand. He took out a small red velvet box from his pocket. I was so surprised that I covered my mouth with my hand. Seeing her father kneeling from a distance, Lily excitedly ran over, shouting, and stood beside us, looking on with anticipation with her big, round eyes. "Chloe, I'm not a perfect person," Liam said. "I have a past, burdens to carry, and sometimes I can be distant. I can't promise you a life without storms, because life is short. However, I can promise you one thing. No matter how fierce the storm, I will always stand in front of you, protecting you. I will hold your hand tightly and never let go." He opened the box. Inside was a simple but elegant platinum ring. "Will you marry me? Will you be the mother of my daughter and walk with me on the remaining path of life?" My tears welled up and streamed down my cheeks. They were not the painful tears of parting at the airport a few years ago, but tears of overflowing happiness. I looked at Liam, then at Lily, who was looking at me with concern. And I nodded vigorously. "Yes. I will marry you, Liam." With trembling hands, Liam placed the ring on my ring finger, stood up, and hugged me tightly. Lily also hugged our legs and smiled brightly. The three of us hugged in front of the vast sea and became a single unit. Although the sea breeze was strong, I felt the warmth in his embrace as if I were at home. My wedding to Liam took place in late autumn, on a day when the sunlight was as abundant as honey spread on the street. There were no flashy wedding cars or romantic dates at luxury 5-star hotels. We decided to have a cozy ceremony in the garden of the Serenity Tea House studio, the very place where our love had blossomed and grown. The guests consisted only of our parents, Lily, and a few close friends like Maya and Mr. Henderson. I wore a simple cream-colored silk dress, my hair tied low with a white flower, and held a bouquet of wildflowers that Liam had picked himself that morning. Liam chose a beige shirt and pants instead of a stiff black suit. He looked unusually young and gentle. My father, wearing a simple boutonniere instead of a formal black suit, took my hand and gave me away to Liam. His hands trembled, and his eyes were red. He leaned close to Liam's ear and said in a choked voice, "I am giving you the most precious gem of my life. Promise me that you will never let this child cry again." Liam held my hand tightly, his eyes full of respect and devotion to his father. "Dad, don't worry. To me, Chloe is my whole life. I swear I will protect her with my life." The moment we exchanged rings, the space was filled with emotion. I saw my mother secretly wiping away tears, Maya smiling contentedly, and Lily, who was standing next to my mother-in-law, beaming. Today, Lily wore a pink princess dress and looked as beautiful as a little angel. As soon as the officiant declared us husband and wife, Lily suddenly ran onto the stage and squeezed in between us. Looking up at me with her big, round eyes, she asked in a clear voice in the quiet space, "Aunt Chloe?" "No, now I should call you Mom Chloe. I will love you as much as I love my mom and dad, Liam." The guests cheered, and the applause was deafening. I bent down and hugged the child tightly, tears of happiness streaming down my cheeks. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you the most in the world. Even more than Dad." Liam laughed out loud and hugged both of us. Nestled in his warm embrace, next to the clear laughter of a child, I felt absolute peace. This was not a lavish wedding to show off to the world. It was a declaration of devotion, unity, and a true sanctuary, where the storm subsided behind closed doors. Looking up at the Casa BC, blue sky visible through the leaves, I was grateful for all the storms that had passed. Thanks to them, I learned to appreciate and cherish the simple happiness of today even more. A year after the wedding, our small family's joy doubled when I found out I was pregnant. It was the day I showed him the pregnancy test with 2 clear red lines. Liam shouted for joy, hugged me, and spun me around in the living room, making me laugh and feel dizzy. We decided to name our son Kai, a name that symbolizes the sea. It was to commemorate the place where our love began and to place where our love began, represent the simple but enduring meaning of becoming stronger through trials. During my pregnancy, I reduced my heavy work at the tea house and entrusted the Dalset management to a reliable employee. However, I did not completely withdraw. Serenity Tea House was now not just a place to drink tea, it had become a familiar destination where women like me, who had experienced the pain of heartbreak, found peace of mind and opened their hearts. On weekend afternoons, I often held small workshops on pottery or flower arranging. It was here that life stories and people's stories were shared in the most sincere way. I used to meet women who were exactly like me. Weak, submissive women who were afraid to step out of the comfort zone of a toxic marriage. I can't forget Mia, a young woman with swollen eyes and bruised arms. She cried as she talked about her fear that she would not be able to raise her child alone if she divorced her abusive husband. I sat down next to her, held Mia's hand, and quietly shared my WWW story. Look, I said, pointing to the misshapen but unique pottery on the shelf. For clay to become precious pottery, it must be fired at a temperature of thousands of degrees. We women are the same. Stumbling is not scary. What's scary is lying there and letting others trample on you. You have 2 hands and a mind, so why do you have to depend on someone who doesn't value you? I did not advise them to get divorced immediately, nor did I try to teach them with empty theories. I simply showed them that happiness is a choice and that independence is the best shield to protect oneself. Seeing the belief gradually to return to Mia's eyes, I realized I had found a new mission. I did not establish a great charity. I simply wanted to use my painful experience to light a small candle of hope for those in the same situation. And sometimes, just one candle is enough to dispel the darkness in a room. Our son, Kai, was born healthy, cute, and just like his father. My life was filled with baby formula, the cries and laughter of a baby, and the love of my husband, Liam, and my daughter, Lily. Everything seemed to flow smoothly. Then, on a hot summer afternoon, I was waiting for Liam in the car. He had gone to the supermarket to buy baby supplies. Outside the car window, the people of Tassin, Chicago were rushing around in the 100-degree heat. My eyes accidentally fell on a middle-aged man struggling to push an old, beat-up delivery scooter loaded with large, heavy boxes onto the sidewalk. He wore a bright red delivery uniform and worn-out sneakers. His back was drenched in sweat, and the deep wrinkles on his face showed his hardship and worry. He took off his mask and quickly took a sip of water from a plastic bottle he was carrying. At that moment, I was stunned. Although time and a hard life had distorted his face, I still recognized it was Ethan. The man who was once a project manager, drove a luxury car, and wore expensive suits, was now making a living doing the most strenuous manual labor in the harsh summer sun. After drinking water, Ethan hurriedly checked the order details on his phone. His hands, which had once only known how to sign documents, were now calloused and astaparnous. Rough. He looked around with tired and desperate eyes, then started the scooter again and disappeared into the bustling crowd to earn a meager wage. I sat in the air-conditioned car, watching the scene, and felt absolutely no emotion. No satisfaction, no contempt, not even pity. It was as if I were watching a movie about the life of a stranger. Karma is indeed fair, but it is also cruel. He used to look down on the money I earned and dreamed of blazing a trail in a foreign land, but in the end, he returned to the starting point, no, to a place even worse than the starting point. Liam opened the car door and got Amadeus in, interrupting my train of thought. "What's wrong? Did you see someone you know?" he asked, seeing me staring intently out the window. I turned around, smiled, shook my head, and glanced at my husband with an Elabet affectionate look. No, honey. I think it was just someone who looked like him. Let's go. It's time for Kai to eat. The car rolled forward, the staggering figure of the man receding behind us. I did not look back. The past was truly behind me, forever buried under the dust of time. The me of the present only looked forward. To the house, where the storm stopped behind the door, and to where the people I love most were waiting. The night was quiet, with only the faint chirping of crickets in the garden. I sat on the second-floor balcony, holding a warm cup of chamomile tea, looking up at the starry sky. In the bedroom, Liam was holding our son, Kai, singing him a lullaby. His voice was deep and warm, and although the pitch was not perfect, it was full of a father's love. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath of the faint scent of gardenias in the wind. Remembering the young woman who had sobbed at O'Hare Airport a few years ago, I felt grateful to her. I was grateful that she had the courage to let go when she needed to. I was grateful that she dared to be cruel once to protect herself. And I was grateful that she did not break down in the face of adversity. Happiness is not about avoiding pain, but about knowing how to overcome pain to find the light. I had walked through the darkest tunnel of my life. And when I stepped into the light, I cherished the warm sunshine of the present even more. I was no longer the woman who had once loved naively and blindly. The woman I am now is one who has been through many storms, who knows how to be content with the present, how to love herself, and how to cherish what she has. Suddenly, the phone on the table rang. It was a strange number calling at this hour. I tried not to answer, but my intuition told me that someone needed me. I pressed the call button. On the other end of the line, I heard the sobbing of a young woman. Her voice was trembling and full of fear. "Chloe, it's me, the one who heard your story at the tea house the other day. Please help me. My husband just confessed he has another woman. I don't know what to do. I want to die." I listened quietly, my heart aching with empathy. I looked at the slightly ajar bedroom door. My husband and son were sleeping soundly inside, and I looked up at the starry sky. I knew that my journey did not end here. My peace was not meant to be enjoyed alone, but to be shared, and to lift up other broken souls. I smiled gently, and my voice echoed peacefully and firmly in the night sky. "Calm down, sweetie. Don't talk about that foolish death. You have your child, your parents, and most importantly, yourself. Take a deep breath. Meet me at the tea house tomorrow morning. I'll make you the best cup of tea. And together, we'll find a solution. Trust me. The sky is always blue after the rain, as long as you have the courage to look up." I hung up the phone, and my heart was filled with contentment and purpose. Life is a cycle of connections, and I was ready to be a big sister and a guide for those who, like my former self, had lost their way in the storm in their hearts. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.